The Twin Falls Jane Doe 2014, identified as Cynthia Gunnerson. She was also known as Sasha Argadage. In September of 2014, while on the Snake River, a kayaker found the body of a woman floating down below the Perrine Bridge in Twin Falls, Idaho. County deputies and search and rescue would respond. They were able to recover the woman, but she had no identification. They were able to gather DNA and fingerprints, but there were no matches. They believed the woman was 45 to 50, and they noted that one strange thing was that she had on men's sneakers, and they were size 11.5, which was far too large for her feet. The authorities believe she may have jumped from the nearby bridge. The sheriff had initially hoped that with the press coverage that was received, her identity would come quickly, but it didn't happen. They worked the case hard, and they canvassed local motels, restaurants, and ways to travel like taxi and truck stops. She was entered into NamUs, but the same happened. There were no results. Although the sheriff ruled out 17 possible matches due to jurisdictions reaching out with their own missing persons, thinking that she was perhaps someone they were missing. In the end, it took Othram Labs and their dedication to finding the names of John and Jane Does. And with that, Cynthia Gunderson had her name again. While her actual age wasn't released, that I could find anyway, she was from San Diego, California, and had somehow found herself in Twin Falls, Idaho. Cynthia's parents released a statement saying they are grateful to have answers about their daughter, and they ask for privacy while they grieve her loss. Cynthia Gunnerson went unidentified for 8 years. The Ridley Township John Doe, identified as Kevin, Alvin, Jude, Carroll. On December 13th in 1978, some boys discovered the remains of a man floating in the Crum Creek, which is located in Ridley Township, Pennsylvania. When he was examined, they discovered that he had been shot 5 times. They determined he hadn't been there very long, a couple of hours up to maybe a couple of days. They believed he was possibly a transient Marine or sailor because they determined that his watch was purchased at a military store. They knew he had brown eyes, wavy brown hair, and he was wearing a wind-up Seiko watch. The watch indicated it was 4:45 on December 10th, but it doesn't state whether or not it was AM or PM. He had an earring in his left ear, a birthmark on his lower left abdomen, and he smoked cool cigarettes. He was actually identified thanks to a tip that was made by a member of the Veteran Doe Network. In December of 2021, a Ridley Township detective named Tim Kearney was contacted by someone from the Veteran Doe Network. They indicated that the John Doe could be a man named Kevin Carroll, who had been discharged December of 1978. Kevin had sent all of his belongings to his new home in Oregon, and while the items arrived, he didn't. This tip would lead to his identification later on in 2022. The Ridley Township John Doe was, in fact, identified as Kevin Carroll. He is listed as being 18 when his life was taken, although I'm not sure how that's possible, given he was discharged from the Army early for a reason not mentioned. Sometimes there's a date of birth, but in this case, Kevin doesn't have one. Although they state he was 18, I think that's highly unlikely. What the police don't understand is why Kevin went missing from Burlington County, New Jersey, and was found in Ridley Township, Pennsylvania. The two were about 40 miles apart. The police are hoping someone will come forward to start to fill in the blanks. At the press conference for this case, the district attorney made the statement, "For nearly half a century, the family of Kevin Carroll has sought answers in connection with the death of their loved one. We hope that today's announcement brings a degree of closure. They were clear that they were still searching for the person who took his life, although it's difficult when so much time has passed. If anyone has any idea what happened, please call the number on the screen." Kevin Carroll went unidentified for 43 years. The Ridgefield John Doe, identified as James Orin Johnson Sr. On January 13, 2002, a man was found hanging from a tree. It was located near railroad tracks in Ridgefield, Washington. The police investigating believed that the man was likely a transient, in part due to the location of where he was found. They knew that his left ear was pierced twice, and he was wearing a metal hoop earring. Forensic genealogy traced his ancestors back to 2 sisters born in Oregon in the 1800s. It was a great start, but it was just too distant in order to narrow down who he was. It's interesting how strangers can help get on the right path in order to identify somebody. So often it's people that didn't know the decedent that ends up putting them on the path to identification. In his case, it was a distant relative named Arlene Zumwalt, who agreed to provide DNA to help narrow down which branch was correct, and she did help. Bode technology eventually determined the unidentified man was likely the biological son of Judith Cox Johnson. They discovered that James Jr. had uploaded his DNA to GEDmatch in hopes of finding his dad one day. And it did in fact lead to James Sr., although in a much more unfortunate way than his son had anticipated. The police then spoke with the family and learned that no one had seen James since 2002. They obtained the social security number for James, and they tried to trace it. The goal was to see if he'd worked, and he had not. In fact, there was no other activity at all since the year that he went missing. His ex-wife had actually paid for a private investigator in 2003 in hopes of finding out what happened to him, but that came up empty. His brother contacted his other son, Jacob, and they would eventually give DNA also to confirm that they had an answer. James once again had his name. The DNA confirmed it. Jacob Johnson, one of James's 2 sons, met the researcher along with his wife and mother. Once they got the news, he gratefully hugged the researcher, and that man, the one who had done all the research trying to find James, would call this probably the most rewarding experience of his life. We know now that James was 32 when he went missing 20 years ago. He had a wife, kids, and a brother that never stopped missing him. And they finally had the answer, although not the one they'd hoped for. They had never expected that James had taken his life 32 years ago. James Orin Johnson Sr. went unidentified for 20 years. Had he lived, he'd be 52 today. The Chatham County John Doe, identified as Jimmy Mack Brooks. In March of 1976, a man was found in the Cape Fear River. He was near the CP&L plant intake valve, which is located near Moncure, North Carolina. It was clearly foul play as someone had removed his head and hands. Despite this, they were still able to tell that he had brown hair and that he was in good health when he lost his life. Investigators thought that the John Doe might have been put in the water upstream, but there was really no clue as to why or what his name was. They believe he was likely 25 to 35, around 5'9" and 150 pounds. While he was entered into NamUs in 2008, it didn't lead to any further clues, and of course without locating his skull they couldn't do a recreation. It was not until the DNA Doe Project and Othram Labs became involved that his name was found. Jimmy Mack Brooks was an unmarried man who was born in 1950 in Allegheny County, North Carolina. He was just 26 when someone took his life. Jimmy was an Army veteran who had been stationed at Fort Bragg. He left the Army just a few years prior to losing his life. Jimmy Mack Brooks went unidentified for 46 years. If you have any information on this case, please call the number on your screen. Thank you so much to everybody commenting. Even with just an emoji, it really has made a big difference. The current goal for the channel is 20,000 subscribers, but we aren't even halfway there as I record this. So if you enjoy the content here and you're not sure, take a peek to see if you're subscribed. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Thanks everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other.